Dillon Brooks might be one of the most disrespected players of this NBA era. Not because he's bad, not because he can't hoop, but because he talks trash and isn't afraid to be physical with anybody. But regular people don't understand what he's actually being paid to do. He's been called overrated, annoying, dirty, arrogant, and fans around the league even came up with the unique nickname Dillon the Villain. Although most of those things might be true, what you can't take away from Dillon Brooks is that everywhere that he goes, the defense gets better, the culture gets tougher, and the teams start winning. From being a college Pac-12 player of the year to then becoming Oregon's all-time leader in scoring, Dillon has always shown that he can be very capable and extremely fearless on both sides of the ball when given the opportunity, even since his early college days. But this season, he's showing us something we've never seen from him. Dillon Brooks has been making every big game or matchup count. Listen to what his own superstar teammate has said about the impact Brooks brings on a nightly basis.
He can do a little bit of everything, and not only was it out there on the court, he works on it too. He's one of the hardest workers I've been around. He spends countless hours. Even when he was going through his injury, I was telling him, are you supposed to be going that hard? But that's his mentality, so it's no surprise to me.
Welcome to Sleeping on the Clock, the channel where impact matters more than hype. If they're sleeping on it, we're speaking on it. When Dillon Brooks got to Memphis, his NBA career got off to a shaky start. The Grizzlies team was full of young guys with a lot of talent, but they didn't have an edge over the already established teams and players across the league. But over the years, Brooks gave them that edge. Night after night, he took the hardest defensive assignments, and he didn't plan on sitting games out. He showed up every single night, fastly making a name for himself for good reasons and some not so great ones. Whoever it was, Dillon Brooks wasn't backing down from anybody, whether they were future Hall of Famers or players making their way there. Here's a list of a couple greats Dillon Brooks has had some run-ins with over the years: Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Jimmy Butler, Donovan Mitchell, and even his current teammate now, Devin Booker. Defense isn't supposed to be pretty, and that's something Dillon Brooks completely understands and uses to his advantage. He plays annoying in-your-face defense for 48 full minutes if he doesn't get fouled out. His play style is of somebody who you absolutely hate playing against but love when they're on your team. Opposing fan bases hate this guy for raising chaos in damn near every game he plays, but maybe that's what's needed sometimes to make a NBA all-defensive team and bring some more excitement to the league. I honestly don't blame him. Defense isn't about being liked, it's about being effective and getting the job done. And in Memphis, Dillon Brooks was effective in ways that didn't always show up on the stat sheet. The Grizzlies became a team nobody wanted to play. They were physical, they were loud, they were confident, and sometimes even too confident. And Dillon Brooks embodied all of that. But with that edge came pressure, because as Memphis got better, expectations got higher, and Dillon Brooks started being asked to do more than what he was used to. He was already guarding the best player, setting the tone defensively, talking trash, and on top of that, he was being asked to create offense. That's when things started to go left. Bad shot selection started standing out more than his good defense. Misses became louder than stops, and instead of people appreciating his hustle plays, they started blaming him for the plays he didn't make. But even through all of that, the Memphis Grizzlies kept winning. They made the playoffs, they competed, they had built a real identity, and the Dillon Brooks effect was a huge part of that identity, whether people want to admit it or not. Eventually though, the situation ran its course, not because Dillon Brooks was bad, not because he couldn't help a team win, but sometimes a player and franchise both need a reset, and that reset changed everything. That reset took Dillon Brooks to Houston. When Dillon Brooks signed with the Rockets, the reaction around the league was immediate and loud. People laughed, they questioned the contract, they called it an overpay. But once again, people were overreacting instead of actually thinking. What most people didn't understand was that Houston wasn't signing Dillon Brooks for what showed up in the box score. They were signing him for what didn't show up in the box score. They were signing him for exactly what their team was missing. They didn't bring him in to be a star. They didn't bring him in to lead the team in scoring. They didn't bring him in to win headlines. They brought him in to fix something. This was a young Rockets team full of talent but lacking structure, accountability, and identity. Houston needed toughness. They needed someone who would show up every night and compete no matter the record or the matchup. They needed someone who would guard the best player without complaining. Someone who would bring intensity even when nobody was watching. And Dillon Brooks walked into that locker room knowing exactly who he was supposed to be, and everybody else fell in line. This time, there was no confusion. He wasn't asked to do too much. He wasn't asked to be the loudest voice in the locker room. He wasn't even asked to prove anything. He was just asked to defend, to lead, and to set the tone. And for the first time in his career, his role was crystal clear. no confusion, no overlap, no pressure to do too much, just responsibility. And once that foundation was set, that's when everything else started to open up. The Dillon Brooks effect was working once again. Houston started winning, not just a little bit, a real jump. Compared to the season before Dillon Brooks arrived, the Houston Rockets saw a major increase in wins. They won 19 more games the first year with Brooks being there, and then won 11 more games than the previous year in just the following year. The Houston Rockets went from being viewed as a bottom tier rebuilding team to a group that could actually compete on a nightly basis in the tough Western Conference. And that doesn't just happen by accident. That happens when habits change, effort becomes consistent, and when defense becomes a priority. Houston wasn't just better on that side of the ball. Everything they did on defense translated to everywhere else on the court. They were better in late game situations, better at staying disciplined for 4 full quarters, and once that started happening, the expectations changed. The bar was raised. This wasn't the same young Rockets team from the year before, still figuring out their identity. Instead of everyone asking, how can Houston compete this year? The conversation quickly became, how far can this team actually go? That's what happens when a young team starts to finally turn the corner. Winning changes perception. It changes how opponents prepare, changes how fans view the team, and it even changes how players carry themselves. And Dillon Brooks has always been a huge contributor on teams that win more than expected. Not because he fills up the stat sheet, but because he raises the floor for everyone around him. Hate it or love it, that's the truth. He makes teams tougher, he makes games harder for opponents, he makes winning more realistic. And both the Memphis Grizzlies and Houston Rockets felt that impact immediately. The Dillon Brooks effect has been clearly real and it's working. The only people that aren't really in favor are the critics. When is a narrative and absolute disrespect going to finally change about arguably one of the league's best floor raisers and most controversial players? This season, Dillon Brooks isn't just bringing old school energy and toughness. He's backing it up with the best field goal percentage of his career, dropping 21 points night after night against your favorite hoopers. Although he slightly struggled shooting from the 3 this season, he's picked it up as of late. And here's the most important part. He's doing it without forcing the game. He's taking open threes, finishing strong when the lane is there, or making the extra pass when it's not. And of course, Dillon Brooks is Dillon Brooks. He's going to be taking over when needed on some nights. His offense improved because the game has finally slowed down for him. When a player fully understands his role and is able to master it, the reads get easier and the shots get cleaner and the impact gets bigger. Let's be clear, scoring over 21 points a game as a so-called role player on a playoff team isn't easy. That's the kind of output you see from secondary stars in the league, not just glue guys. People want to label him a villain, but look at the numbers and what he's actually doing on the court. He's not just defending, he's scoring at an all-star level, and his efficiency shows he's doing it the right way. Whether it's late shots or big matchups, Brooks is putting up 21 plus points a night when it matters. And that's not a coincidence. Just check this season's box score. This season, just like every other in the past, he's been trusted with the toughest defensive assignments. But this year, he's giving Phoenix 21 plus points on any given night. That's not easy to do because when you're playing next to a superstar, you don't get rhythm shots. You get timing shots and sometimes grenades. Clutch bucket after clutch bucket, momentum threes, plays that might not always make the headlines, but they swing games. This is a player who understands exactly when to be aggressive and when to let the game breathe. That's why this season feels different. Dillon Brooks is only going to become more valuable as the season continues because the games get tighter, the matchups get tougher, and the pressure gets heavier. That's where players like Dillon Brooks matter the most. When playoff basketball hits, skill alone isn't enough. You need guys willing to sacrifice, you need toughness, you need guys who aren't afraid of the moment. And Dillon Brooks has never been afraid of that moment. As possessions matter more, as games slow down, Dillon Brooks becomes more important, not less. Because he doesn't panic, he doesn't disappear, he leans into the smoke, and that's why coaches trust him, that's why teammates respect him, and that's why he's on the floor where games matter most. This season isn't just about proving people wrong anymore, it's about forcing them to update the conversation. Because Dillon Brooks is no longer just the villain, he's no longer just a role player, he's no longer just the troll, he's a winning player in his prime. He's having one of the best seasons of his career, and he's even in trade talks to possibly join 2 of his biggest NBA rivals this season. Even though this might be crazy, imagine Dillon Brooks guarding the other team's best player next to Luka and LeBron so that they can reserve their energy on the defensive side so they can hide the biggest weakness they've had all season, guarding the other team's best player. Imagine a Lakers team that can put their differences aside and finally acquire someone who truly embraces being the bad guy in big moments. Love him or hate him, Dillon Brooks is exactly the type of player championship teams keep trying to find. Everybody talks about the stars, but championships are won by guys who change the tone. And if the Lakers are really looking at Dillon Brooks, that tells you everything that you need to know about his value. If average fans still don't see the Dillon Brooks effect, they're not actually watching basketball. If you made it this far, I know you have real basketball knowledge, so please do me a favor, like the video if you want more basketball breakdowns like this, and subscribe to the channel so I can keep you informed and entertained with more videos of players the world keeps sleeping on. And most importantly, drop a comment down below and tell me who I should break down next and what you think of the video. Now remember, if they're sleeping on it, you already know we're speaking on it.